My guests today are writer-director Melissa Fisher and actress Carolina Gutierrez and their Oscar-qualified short film, Buscando Alma. Now, Melissa Fisher is a member of the International Cinematographers Guild and has over 12 years of industry experience working on Academy and Emmy Award-winning films and television series. Melissa worked her way up from the camera PA on Michael Bay's Pain and Gain to camera assist on films like La La Land and to eventually running the camera department on hit television shows like Glow and The Dropout. Now, Melissa has made several short films that have screened at Academy accredited festivals, and her most recent film, Today's Subject, Buscando Alma, won the Oscar qualifying jury award at the Out on Film Festival in Atlanta. And with us today is also Carolina Gutierrez, who is a Colombian actress and has recently been nominated for Best Actress by the Association of Colombian Actors in the TV film category for her role as Sarah in the Colombian television show La Castilla de Eva. Now, most recently, her latest film, Buscando Alma, premiered at the Out on Film Festival and received first place for the short film, again being coming Oscar qualified. Now, Carolina has also appeared in several television shows and movies, including her role as assassin Emma Ruiz on NCIS LA, Marissa on the L Word Generation Q, and Sarah on the La Castilla de Eva in Colombia, and the lead in the national commercial with Nissan. Now, their newest short film, Buscando Alma, is about a transgender Honduran immigrant who was separated from her mother at the U.S. border as a small child. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome writer-director Melissa Fisher and actress Carolina Gutierrez and their Oscar-qualified short, Buscando Alma, to the show. Well, welcome, ladies, and it's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well,
Thank you for that
yes.
introduction.
Well, you're very, very welcome. And I must say, what a powerful, moving film you have created. So, Melissa, I'm going to ask you, how did you come to write this story and what was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so Buscando Alma was actually originally inspired by a podcast that I had encountered. It was something I heard years ago, and it struck me on such a deep emotional level. It's called The Birth Dream by Andy Mara. I always recommend it and give her credit because honestly, this project would not exist without her. It's a really gorgeous retelling of how she reconnected with her family in Korea after decades of separation, and similarly was trans and was trying to meet her mother for the first time. And there was something just so beautiful and emotional about the way this podcast stuck with me. I listened to it multiple times and it brought me to tears multiple times. And I just felt like there was something so deeply universally human that even though our lives and our cultures were so different, there was something that resonated with me as a filmmaker, as an artist, as a human being. And also at the time, I felt like there was so much antagonism against both the migrant and the trans community that telling this alternative story, one that is of compassion, of instant acceptance, was just something that we needed in our communities and in this country more than ever.
Well,
I had met, I had met my co-writer, Mare Flores, during the pandemic. We took a writing workshop together, and I just really connected with her voice and her work. And she had some of her own personal experiences with immigration struggles, and I asked if she would be willing to write this project with me. So she jumped on as co-writer, and although it was originally inspired by The Birth Dream, we found our own way to bring some of our own lives and perspectives into this story, and so that's kind of how it evolved and became what it is today.
well, this film caused me to take a lot of notes. And so, and I watched it multiple times. And so I'm taking down notes as to the highlight, or what I would call highlights or elements. So you have trans identity, you have immigration, you have family separation, you have parental love between mother and child, mixed with acceptance, compassion, and healing. there's a strong connection between the physical, emotional, and even the spiritual component in this film. How were you able to take all those elements and just capture them into such a powerful, heartfelt film?
It was a long journey, and I think the length of time it took to get this project off the ground actually lent itself to how beautiful the film is in the end. It's something that my co-writer and I developed for about a year. I think we had different iterations of it before we started to seek out funding and try to actually get it off the ground. So I think having that much time to really sit with it and marinate, and I watched as many documentaries and read books and listened to podcasts, and I would drive down to Mexico and volunteer in Tijuana at refugee shelters, and I spent time in Mexico learning Spanish. And I think all of that immersion and all of that time lent itself to me really honing in on what exactly we wanted to say with this story, which we had 15 minutes to do. So we really truly had to be as economical as possible to tackle all of these themes and all of these emotional beats that resonated with us so deeply. So I think it was just a matter of like immersing ourselves in the culture, in the community, and then just having the time to really hone in on what it was that we wanted to say. I think one thing that really helped is having a lot of nonverbal storytelling within this project, because it is only 15 minutes long and we are trying to tackle so many topics and themes and emotional elements. So as much as I could get away with the visuals, with the flashbacks, with interweaving these multiple storylines visually, I think that helped as well.
Yeah, and I noticed that because the flashbacks were perfectly placed, caused no confusion in the story. Um, I also noticed the dialogue was not completely minimal, but what was written and what was said was important to the story. And sometimes I do like non dialogue films because it puts all the work onto the cinematographer as well as the director, but even mostly on the actor to bring forth the message through. It could be facial expressions, it could be definitely on how silence is used, the look in the eyes. So, and that's all there in this film. But I have to ask, did you write this with the role of Cristina with Carolina in mind?
No, actually, I didn't discover Carolina until the casting process. And it was one of my biggest anxieties was how do we find this person? We needed a transgender Latina within the right age range that had the chops to pull off this role. And I was like, I hope we find them. Thankfully, I got Alan Luna on board as our casting director. I was already familiar with some of his work, and I knew that he's an advocate for both the LGBTQ community and the Latinx community. So I felt like he would be the perfect collaborator for this project because he really knew those types of people within the community. And we held auditions, and Carolina submitted a tape. And I was so grateful that I felt immediately when I saw her tape, it brought me to tears. And all of my fears and anxieties around this casting process disappeared because I knew that she was just perfect for the role and brought all of the sensibilities and vulnerabilities and the emotion and just this raw insight into this character. She was bringing such deeply personal insights, and I just knew she would be perfect for it. So it was meant to be that we found
Well,
Carolina.
I would say so. And Carolina, why was this role so important for you to play? And in some ways, was it life imitating art?
Oh my gosh. Yes and yes. I think for me, being a Latina trans woman who came to this country looking for opportunities, looking to be able to finally be myself, I transitioned after I moved to the US, just like Christina, and just getting the opportunity to put that story out there for people to see the human side of this experience especially in a time like this where trans people, immigrant people are being attacked, are being robbed of their civil and human rights. I felt so lucky to get to play this part, and I wanted to make sure I did my absolute best and not only take from my own experience, but also make sure that I learned about what goes on during a transition like this, not just a transition gender wise, but also from another country. I watched a lot of documentaries that Melissa provided. I listened to the podcast that she was inspired by, and all of that combined really stuck with me. And I brought that with me every single day we were shooting. And I wanted to really dig deep into those feelings that I felt my entire life, that I had to kind of just bring back to that moment and just put it all out. And I think it worked out.
Well, here's the thing why this film stands out on its own when covering a subject like this. And Melissa, this really goes to you because within the story, you bring a normalcy. I'm using that word as a compliment, a normalcy to to Christina, to Carolina's character. She's a doctor or a nurse. She contributes to society just like anybody else would. She has a husband or a boyfriend. That whole, and the whole scene with the exchange with, I guess I'm just going to say husband slash boyfriend.
Mhm.
Um, it's like it's like seamless. It's natural, and I have not seen that in a film this year. And so kudos to you for that. And
Thank you.
so and so when people see this, they need to look past the storyline because there's more to this film than just the storyline. You know,
Yeah,
so kudos to you on that. And so
thank
and
you.
I can see why you cast Carolina for this role. And
Yeah.
because it's a wow type of film when you watch it because it's beautiful in so many ways. But I want to get into the story into this film, into the storyline, because there's a lot of scenes that I kept replaying because I kept taking notes. Because I'm looking at it like, okay, because what I love about short films is you have to watch them closely because what happens in the first act, you're going to see it again in the third act because it's a leading up to. And you have the mother, and wow, you couldn't have picked a better actress to play the mother in this film.
She's incredible. We are so lucky. Yes.
Yeah, and so, but what the laundromat scene,
Mm.
she's minding her own business. There's a young man, one of the washers or dryers, it didn't work, but she looked at him, and you could tell she's wondering, and
Mm.
she was wondering, is that my son?
Mhm.
But then she asked where he's from, and then and it's so funny because from the moment when she's looking at him wondering, but then when she asks and finds out he's from El Salvador, she's just like, it's almost like the look on her face or the countenance inside it's almost like it's just instantly wiped away. It's like, okay, that's not him, and she just kind of
Yeah,
moves on, but it still
it's
kind of
crushing.
lingers. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
kind of lingering. So and it goes back to it goes back to the scene going in to, I think we'll call it the second act, where Christina is sitting on the edge of the bed, or she's with her husband or boyfriend, and she's like, did she ever look for me? Did she ever
Mhm.
try like I'm trying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's so much connection in this because the laundromat scene connects to the ending because the mother knows. But I
Mhm.
love the contrast between the laundromat and the ending because it made the ending so much more powerful and so much emotional. And I mean, Carolina.
It's funny,
Yeah.
the laundromat scene was actually not in the original draft of the script. Yeah, so it's something that came along as we were progressing, my writer and I, and we just felt like we needed one extra scene to not only establish her character and her day-to-day life, so that you start to get a little more time with her, fall in love with her a little bit more. But we realized we needed to establish that longing outside of the prayer scene at the church, which was always in the script.
Oh, we're
But
gonna
we
get
were
to
like,
that.
we needed one more moment where the audience can really drop in with her and understand this sense of heartbreaking longing. And I think that makes, as you said, makes the ending so much more powerful.
Okay, I'm gonna
Um,
ask you a question because I got to wondering because it plays well. The young man in the laundromat, when I looked at him and then I look at Christina, I'm like, okay, did you try to find someone that was close in look and feature in the male version so that way the mother would go, maybe that's him?
We definitely did, and specifically with our younger actor River, we wanted to try to find someone that might look like River, older. And then on top of that, honestly, Gerardo was just one of the best actors that auditioned for the part. He's just so talented, so natural, so real, so grounded. So just from his tape, I knew I really wanted to work with him. So then it helped a lot that he looked a lot like River, and then who plays our young Christian. So you could imagine that that's what Alma is thinking when she sees him in the laundromat. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Carolina, let me ask you because
Yeah.
in the opening scene, you're you're either a nurse or a doctor, either one,
Hmm.
and so you have this job, and then you go home. You have a husband or boyfriend. Um, your portrayal is absolutely stellar,
Wow.
and because what I always look at in these films, especially with the actors, it's like, are you living the part? And in this case, you're bringing your own personal story because I'm gonna be upfront and honest here. When I watch the film, I didn't know I'm gonna say the first time I watched the film. I didn't know until after I watched it a second and third time. But the first time I watched it, I didn't know you were trans. And
Yeah.
and I'm like, I actually went online to find out. And I was like, wow. I said, this is kind of cool. Because I was
Yeah.
like, because when I watched the film as a regular audience member, because look, if you're at a film festival, most audience members never read the log line. They're sitting there, they're just waiting for the film to start. They have no clue. So your portrayal, again, was stellar in every scene because I felt it. Now, for you, mentally, I'm even going to say soulfully, how did you prepare for that actual role?
Well, honestly, I've always wanted the opportunity to show people that trans people are just like you and anyone else. We are just living our lives, our ordinary lives. We have jobs, we have families, we have boyfriends, girlfriends, kids. I know personally friends that are married, that have children. I have a friend that's an anesthesiologist. She works in the medical field. She's beautiful, she's talented, and no one knows that she's trans. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that that story doesn't get told a lot. People usually tend to go for the more trauma based stories. And even though this story definitely has trauma, it's not about being trans in the sense of that's not the main trauma of her life. The main trauma of her life, it's missing her mother. It's feeling like she was left behind. It's feeling like her mother might not recognize her because she's gone through this incredible transition, no pun intended. So in a way, I wanted that to be told in a way that was real. And this is real. I'm real. I am trans, and I have friends that are trans that are just like me, and that people need to know that we are out here, and that trans comes in all shapes, forms, and colors. And that's the beautiful thing about being trans. We're all individuals, and but our stories continue to matter, and always reminding ourselves that we deserve, again, the same rights, the same love, the same respect that everyone else has. So I
It,
think that in it.
that's why this is why I like this film. I love this film because of the fact is being on this side and watching so much of different types of films, I get tired of filmmakers falling into the stereotype.
Yeah.
Is it like you said? I've already seen, the trans films where they're beat up, killed for because of who they're trying to be.
Yep.
This film is the complete opposite. And like you said, it's not the actual focus. It's the focus between mother and child searching for the last 2 decades for one another, wondering, will we ever get back together? That's the heart of what this film is actually about. Now,
Yes.
I want to get to the church
Yeah.
scene because I don't know how many times I've replayed that. Because I
Oh.
was watching the mother because her
Yeah.
acting is amazing. But Melissa, there's these little elements of camera movement in that scene. But on the base of the storyline, she used her faith to believe that she would find her child. What I
Hmm.
loved about that is here is Cristina wondering, has she ever tried to look for me? And for some, they may not know actually how to physically look. It's kind of like the laundromat scene. It's more of like, am I going to get lucky and they just come into my life?
Hmm.
But I love the fact that you brought the mother into the church scene because she's relying on a power much larger than her, much larger than all of us. Why was this scene in particular so important to the whole story?
Yeah, I always intended to have the mother character be someone of faith, and someone who has spirituality and a deep connection to her faith. Um, one thing I loved in the original podcast, which was the inspiration, was that Andy's mother similarly was a Christian woman and was deeply involved with her church. And yet those elements had no impact on how instantaneously, deeply, and profoundly she loved and accepted her child. And I felt like it was something I wanted to see more of as well. I myself, my father's a minister, and I grew up in the church. And so religion has definitely shaped who I am as a person and my moral compass and my perspective of the world. And I think it's a lot of why I am so compassionate and wanting to take care of other people and see that everyone has their rights. And um, I think in terms of showcasing her, it was just deeply important to me that we saw her as this spiritual woman. Yet in the end, it's like it partially is her faith that brings her back to her child, and yet her faith is not something that stands in the way of her accepting her child.
That's right. It didn't stand in the way. And I love the quick camera shot when it panned over to the mother holding the little child. And then it goes back to the mother and you see the look on her face because it's almost like it's almost telling you that every time she goes to church, she's praying, where is my child? Lord, bring my child back to me some way, somehow. And
Hmm.
but then you add in the element of the rosary beads that play a very important connection in this film. I almost missed it. And I don't know
Mm.
why, but when I went back, I'm like, oh, the rosary beads. That's the physical element of the connection
Hmm.
between the two, and I love that. And it showed me that
Yeah.
even if the mother didn't know where her child was, the Lord, she was praying and knew the Lord is with him and he will keep him safe until I find him.
Hmm.
And I just love that. And that's why this scene is so powerful. And for you Carolina, when you go back and you watch this film, what goes through your mind?
Um, it's funny you mentioned the rosary because I myself also have a very strong relationship with my mother, who is very, very religious, very Catholic, and she has instilled a lot of things, like Melissa was mentioning, that I think have shaped my life as well. And sorry for the dogs.
That's okay. It happens.
They howl all at the same time. Um, should I pause or do you want me to keep going?
No, you're good. No, 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 keep going.
This happens to me when I'm self-taping all the time too. Anyways, as I was saying, I myself have a very strong relationship with my mom, who happened to give me a rosary. She has given me actually multiple rosaries, and she's always telling me to pray, telling me to have those conversations with God. And even if I myself don't consider myself a very religious person, I definitely consider myself a very spiritual person and someone that wants to continue to have that feeling of spirituality within me, and the rosary resembles and exemplifies that in my own personal life. So when the movie came about, I was like, oh my god. And I actually told this to Melissa too. During the audition process, I used the rosary that my mom gave me during the scene that she presents the rosary to her mother. That was one of the scenes that we used, that was used for the self tape. And it was funny because he was like, wow, this is meant to be, it's perfect. So
Well, yeah, because the scene where Christina is sitting down and she's talking to her husband or boyfriend, and she's like, "I just want to know if she's ever tried to look for me." But then it goes to this. Then there's that scene where Christina makes the phone call, but
mm,
never says anything. But what I loved about that scene was the mother. She never, you could tell from the church scene, well, from the laundromat to the church scene to when she's in her own kitchen and the phone rings, she's never let, she's never forgotten her child.
mm-mm,
She's always wondered. She's in a
Hmm.
way, and in a way, even though she's not physically like walking them down the street and going city to city trying to find out where her child is, there is the longing that's still there. So that longing is connecting her that one day I'm going to find him. And so when Christina calls her mother, what I loved was Christina knew right then and there that she has always looked for me.
mm,
Because what does she say on the phone? She goes, "Is that you, Christian?"
mm.
Yeah.
And Carolina, the look on your face in that scene is just magical.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's beautiful and heartbreaking. Yeah.
It felt very real to me. And yeah, at the moment we shot that scene, Melissa and I kind of had to hug each other and embrace each other because it was that
We
powerful.
were both crying.
Well, Melissa, were you on the phone on the other end? Because I always wonder how phone scenes work in films. Is it nobody there, or is there somebody on the other end so that the actor can actually play off of someone to enhance the emotion of the scene?
I was just off camera and I was doing the off-screen dialogue for her. Yeah. And that way it kind of allowed me to emotionally connect with her and try to play off of what she was giving, and I would try to give back with my voice. And I think we had a really beautiful, intimate connection there in that moment. We had a very narrow window of light too to get that perfect sun flare right behind her. So I think we were trying to get it within like a 10 to 15 minute window. And I just sat right behind my cinematographer and fed her those off camera lines. And by the end, by the time I said cut, we both just started crying and hugged each other. It was really moving and powerful. And I just felt like we had captured everything that I had ever wanted for that scene. And I just
I
felt so
I can
grateful.
imagine.
Uh-huh.
And Carolina, it looks like you're moved just by us talking about it.
I mean, if it's this entire process for me has been incredibly, I don't know. We love, me and Melissa always say this. There's a cosmical aspect to this entire thing that has happened to us. Buscando Alma really was meant to be. This cast, this crew, this interview, everyone, everything is just like falling into place in such a cathartic, such a cosmical way that feels so special that I can't help but to feel emotional every time we talk about it.
Yeah, well,
The
we're gonna get and Melissa, we're gonna get to the sun flare here in a moment because I noticed something, and I'll ask you about that in a bit, but I want to ask you, Carolina, because when Christina put the clothes on to hide her real self, and she's staring in the mirror, she was worried about how her mother would be if she knew that her son was a woman. How
Mhm.
true to life was that scene for you?
Oh my God, so real. I didn't transition until my early 20s. So I spent close to 2 decades hiding who I was, believe it or not. And I had to go back there to those times where I used to have to try to put up a front and pretend to be someone that I wasn't because I was afraid of rejection, especially from my own mother, who I look up to like no one else. She is my everything. So I understood where Christina was coming from. And I have had those moments where I would look myself in the mirror and, maybe this is too much. I don't know. I don't want to get the wrong impression, or, should I show my feminine side? But it makes everyone uncomfortable. So you pull back and you hide again, and then you put it in the back burner. And then again, all those feelings come back because you always are going to be who you are. I believe that trans people are born trans. I believe that LGBT people are who they say they are, and we have to believe them. And in this case, Christina knew who she was so strongly that if anything, she was doing this maybe as a gift to her mother. Like, I'll do anything. I'll dress in boy clothes if I have to. I just want to see you. I just want to meet you again.
Well, when he walked in, when he walked in and saw you standing there wearing the flannel shirt and the t-shirt, the look on his face was like, be who you really are. He never said a word. You could just tell by the look on his face. And then that's when that scene starts to change. But we have got to talk about probably one of the best climactic endings of any film I've seen so far. And
Wow.
there's a few films out there that have amazing endings and will bring a tear to your eye, and those are the best endings you can create. And this film has that type of ending because it is just wow. There were two elements that made this scene beautiful. When one is when the mother saw the rosary beads because that was the cement because then
Mhm.
she knew. But there is this, and I had to play this scene 3 times to make sure I didn't miss it. And I think it's very really poignant. So there is this very slight look from the mother as she says, "My love," and her eyes scan just slightly downward, not looking at her son as a woman, but looking at Christina as it's really you. And I sat there and I was just like, oh my gosh. Because instead of having the mother look at her as judging her, she looked at her like, oh my gosh, you're finally here in front of me. You're here with me after all of these years. And I almost wanted to start crying at that point.
We definitely hope that you do start crying at that point.
I can almost feel it now. So yeah, but it was a brilliant, moving ending, and I hope people will notice the look that the mother gives
Yeah,
because it says so much more.
yeah. And Jackie is such a phenomenal actress. We're so grateful for her.
Right on.
I hadn't seen her do that scene. It wasn't part of the audition. For the audition, I only did the laundromat and the prayer scene. So those are the only two scenes I had seen her deliver from an acting standpoint. But just from those two, I knew that she was so profoundly connected to this character and would be able to pull it off. But that was another scene where we had a very narrow window of lighting, like a 10 to 15 minute zone to capture that perfect magic hour flair behind them, which from a cinematic standpoint was always my goal. We've always wanted this film to feel like a love letter between mother and child, and anything we could do to capture that cinematically. But then it gave so much pressure to our actresses to be able to deliver this really powerful, poignant scene. And again, I was just so grateful that as soon as we got them together and we started shooting, just magic happened, and all of that emotion and that depth they brought, and yeah, that look from Jackie. As soon as my editor and I found it in the cutting room, we were like, ah, there it
Oh, so
is.
you didn't
We're both crying.
so you didn't really
I
notice it when
well,
it was filmed?
I did when we were shooting it, but I made them do it like I don't know 3 or 4 times. So we had different iterations of that same performance. But when my editor Tyler and I were in the cutting room, and it is a process of finding that magic once again in the edit. So as soon as we had just that right amount of time on Christina and that right amount of time on Alma and that one look and then the way the score hits, I do think just magic happens. And I'm very
So for
grateful for
you,
my entire
Carol,
team.
yeah, I mean, it was a wow. It was a wow moment, but and that's the thing that I love when you watch certain scenes. It's like this one tiny glimpse that makes a world of difference. And if that little thing wasn't there, it would have it would have been missing, or it could have been losing the moment. But oh my gosh, when she did that, and by the time third or fourth time that I replayed it, I'm like, that's exactly what she's doing.
Mhm.
And because again, and so you, and what is the beautiful thing is you ended this because within the whole film there is no judgment,
Yeah.
none whatsoever. I mean, for you, Carolina, when you did that scene, what was going through, I guess not even just through your mind, just I mean, what was going through your heart in that scene?
I mean, outside of the technical aspects of it, knowing that we had limited time, that we wanted to, nail it and get the lighting, get the timing, I wanted it to feel like a build up because it was a build up for Christina all of these years. I think the moment that always gives me chills looking back at it, it's when she first shows up on that frame and she sees her mom cleaning, and you can see, and then she starts walking, and it's that kind of like you're walking but you're still looking, and it's kind of like you're getting closer and closer, and I feel that every time I watch it, and I've seen it so many times, I still get those chills of like, oh my god, it's happening, and I know what's going to happen, but it's still so emotional and so exciting. And everyone that has talked to me after seeing it always feels so relieved, that they're like, oh my god, I was so scared that she was going to reject you, but then it happened and I was so happy, and I was like, yeah, me too, because that's what I wanted it to happen too. And I can't help but to remember the first time I came out to my mom as transgender. I remember telling her, actually, I had someone speak for me. I couldn't even speak. I was speechless for like 2 days. I went mute. I mentally broke down, and I had my aunt tell her, who I had come out to first, and my mom immediately hugged me, and she said, "I always knew." Those were her words, and it was a very similar situation where there was no judgment. I never felt hesitation from my mom, especially after 20 years of not knowing, but always knowing inside that she always had a daughter. And so that, to me, it was kind of like replaying itself in the story, and it was beautiful. It was so perfect.
And that's why this role for you was life imitating art.
Yeah.
But you know, when you were walking up the
Mhm.
sidewalk,
That.
the look, so the mother is, she's sweeping her sidewalk, and then she stops. There's this this innate telepathic type power, because it's kind of like the mother. It's kind of like she knew. A mother always knows her child,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
and it was that very powerful, quick magic moment, and it just carried over to the very end. But I want to.
There's a line in our script that I always love to give credit to my co-writer for, which is that Alma looks to Christina and then starts to move towards her like her compass is magnetic. And I just felt, and then as soon as we were on set and Jackie had that look and then just slowly gravitated towards her, me and my co-writer just grabbed onto each other because we were like, it's happening. And it's exactly how we envisioned it. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was paced very well. I mean, not
Mhm.
rushed, not um it didn't drag. It
Mm-mm.
was just this perfect motion. But you got to tell me about the cinematography, because it's beautiful. And with all of the cinematographers that you have worked with, you chose
Mhm.
Boa Simon. Why?
We went to college together. We have been longtime collaborators, and he's one of my dearest friends. We had shot a project together a few years prior, and it was the first time we had worked together again since being in university 10 years prior. And him and I just have this innate, kind of like with Carolina and I, we have this innate collaboration where we can almost work together without words. We're just so in sync with how we want the project to feel. His ability as a camera operator, in terms of, because we did a lot of handheld photography in this, and a lot of it's really emotionally motivated about when to move the camera, when to push in, when to pan from one character to another. And he just has such an innate sensibility that's so in tune and aligned with mine about how to move the camera. And then we just had long, long, long conversations about the lighting and how we wanted it to feel and the flares and the color. So I chose him just because not only is he one of my dearest friends, but he's incredibly talented. And I think this project will lead to much more opportunities for him because I think it showcases his work in really, really beautiful ways.
Yeah, I think I counted, and I probably didn't even get the number right. I know that I can remember at least five perfectly placed sun flares, which I knew
Yeah.
were real. They weren't done in post, they were real. But I also like the fact that the way the sun flares were used, there is a softness to those scenes. So they're not
Hmm.
like super crisp. Of course, they're not blurry or anything, but they just have this softness that plays along with the emotion and plays along with the storyline. And then you bring it up, then you have the colorization, which just, I mean, you could only call it beautiful, because that's what it was. Because it all played the
Thank
sun
you.
flares from the color to this softness,
Yeah.
this look in the poignant scenes. It just blended so well.
Yeah, we picked those lenses very specifically for their characteristics because they have these really gorgeous, blooming, colorful flares, but they're not too much. You know, sometimes with a flare, it kind of obscures or like veils the whole image. But for us, we picked those just so that they could like beautifully punctuate the most emotionally evocative moments in the film. So when she's on the phone or when she sees her mother for the first time, you get that like flare hit to just perfectly kind of punctuate their kind of internal state of mind. So that was all really intentional, and we're lucky that that Mother Nature also came out for us,
Well,
and that we
yeah.
had these beautiful sunny days.
Well, because this is probably the third or fourth short film that I've seen this year where the directors were chasing sunlight,
Yeah.
and that a lot of the shots were literally just a miracle waiting to happen, because when you're
Hmm.
using real sunlight and you're waiting for a position, or you're waiting for a flare to appear, and you're either racing sunrise or you're racing sunset. But yeah, that's what I love, when filmmakers use nature to its advantage, and
Hmm.
not going into post saying, yeah, put that flare there, and change it, because it's just something about when it's done so natural, because the storyline
Yeah.
was so natural, so it played into it. Now, when this film has been seen by audiences, what's been the reaction?
It's been a gift to be able to sit with audiences and see how emotionally it impacts people. We've had a lot of people come and tell us stories of their own of how they connected with it, whether it's an immigration journey or a situation with them and their parents. But it just has continued to show us how universal this story is, how it impacts people in really emotional ways. I mean, anyone's relationship with their own parents. And that's always been our goal, is just to tell a trans story, an immigrant story, but from a universal standpoint. And I think the way in which we were able to craft it so that it's impacting so many people so deeply is just a testament to our entire team and to our cast, that we were able to pull off a beautiful story of compassion and have it resonate with people in this way.
Well, Carolina, what?
Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, 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 no. What I'm thinking is, for you, Carolina, when
Yes.
when you appear at the festivals, when this film is shown, out of all the questions that you're asked, which question from an audience member moved you the most?
Um, I think just how much the our performances as actors, for example, being an actor myself, touched every person that would has reached out to me personally at a Q&A, at a festival, in any of our screenings. And I can tell just by looking at them. We are looking at each other and I can see their emotion and I can feel how much they want to let me know that the film touched them. It feels honest. It doesn't feel like, oh, let me just go say hi and tell her how good she did. It really feels like an honest review, an honest opinion on how they took the film and how much it moved them. Whether it's because they cried or because it reminded them of something, regardless, their eyes are telling me something, and it's always the truth. And that truth is that our performance, we're so lucky. I want to give a shout out to Mark Anthony, who played my boyfriend husband, to Jackie, to even just the baby that I'm putting the shot in their arm. That, every single person that was part of this film in front of the camera, like, they gave so much that it felt so easy for me as a performer to be able to give it my all as well, and feel so well accompanied by so much talent, that whenever people see that and recognize it, I feel like, okay, we did it. Like, I can sit back and just enjoy the show and know that we did our part, and that feels really good.
You're a superstar, and your star is just going to keep rising. I
Thank
mean,
you.
without a doubt, from what I've seen, and Melissa, I looked at your resume on IMDb, and my mouth hit the floor. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I've seen that many multi-million-dollar blockbuster films on one resume that wasn't Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks or Clint Eastwood, and to work behind the scenes and to see all those films, all kudos to you, because I was just like wowed.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm grateful I've had an opportunity to work on so many phenomenal projects with really talented directors, and I know it's helped form who I am as a storyteller and as a filmmaker too. I've been inspired by really, really phenomenally talented directors and carry that with me each time I'm on set. So
Yeah, I think it's
I'm
probably getting pretty close for you to start directing your own blockbuster. But in the
I
meantime, how does it
I'm
feel to
ready,
be Oscar
available.
qualified?
We're so excited. It's been an insane whirlwind of only a couple months because we premiered our film in October. And we won our very first premiere festival, which gave us our Oscar qualification. So we're grateful to be in the company of so many other incredible Oscar qualified films, but we're just excited to be here. If anything, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share this project with the 10,000 members of the Academy. What an incredible opportunity for us to showcase this work that we were so deeply passionate about this story, this message of compassion and inclusivity, and that we get to share it with so many people on this platform is really meaningful for us.
Well, let me ask you this, because you came after the September deadline, is this film allowed to be qualified even into next year after this year's Oscars? Or just for the
Um, well,
2025?
we've submitted for 2025. We were right up against the deadline, so we're in the race for 2025 and hopeful that we make it onto that short list.
Well, I know one thing,
Yeah.
that there's a lot of little miracles in this film.
Yes.
And to be qualified and
Mhm.
accepted after the deadline, another miracle happens. So uh, keep those rosary beads close.
Yes.
So, but yeah, it's a beautiful film. And look, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you this: Buscando Alma is about a Honduran immigrant who is given the chance to meet her mother after nearly 2 decades of separation. Now, as she grapples with the uncertainty of their reunion, she is confronted by traumatic memories of her past. This film is so good. The storyline is emotional from the perspectives of Alma, the mother, as well as Cristina. Two lives connected, yet separated by almost 20 years, like two spirits trying to find their way home. The cinematography is brilliantly beautiful. That's the only way I can say it. The flashbacks, properly placed, giving us the backstory. Not easy to do in a short film, but it was stellar filmmaking. From scene to frame, the story and the love flow seamlessly together to the very end. Now, if you are a lover of film, you will want to replay the ending a few times because it is not only something to see, it is an experience to feel. And you can feel the incredible power of a mother's love in that scene. And you can feel the unconditional love and the acceptance that Cristina receives from her mother. And be sure that when you see this film, don't miss the look that the mother gives in that scene because it seals, and I should say, gives the seal of approval upon this film because it's that one little glimpse that makes a world of difference. And for all of us, let's take that little glimpse for ourselves. So whenever we look upon anyone upon this planet, let's be acceptive. Let's accept them for who they are and who they desire to be because we would want the same thing in return. And
Yes.
Melissa and Christina, what an incredible film you have created. And no wonder you're Oscar qualified. So much success to both of you and your whole team on your Oscar journey. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Thank
very, very
you.
welcome. And I'm the one that has the honor and the pleasure to have both of you on this program. And ladies and gentlemen, and for all of you filmmakers out there, continue to keep your eye not only on Melissa Fisher, but you better keep your eye on Carolina Gutierrez because, again, that star just continues to rise. And if you're a casting agent, you better keep your
Yeah.
eyes open too. I mean, look, she's already got her self-tape screen behind her. She's ready to go. So,
Hey, done.
yeah, that's it. That's it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
but again, ladies and gentlemen, when you get a chance to see Buscando Alma, it is going to be a film that is something to see and experience. And as for me, ladies and gentlemen, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.